I've been seeing a lot of imagery of the face-off and a lot of videos surrounding the face-off between Daniel Dubois and Joseph Parker. You were there, you conducted it, you were in the middle of it all. What did you take away from that little meeting of the minds?
And now super confident, maybe slightly overconfident, Daniel Dubois. He's now someone that truly believes in himself. He thinks he's on the cusp of being the heavyweight or the best heavyweight of this generation. I almost felt, sort of going into it, there was an overlooking of Joseph Parker. Obviously, you remember that bit where he went in the ring after I interviewed Alexander Usyk and he was calling out Usyk and it was almost like, oh, Joseph Parker's a formality and it's done. I'm going to fight Usyk and then I'm going to fight whoever, AJ, whoever. And I felt like I got that sense from him in the face-off. His head was down, not interested. And he only seemed to get interested when pushed by Andy Lee about the quitting against Alexander Usyk. Yeah, that jab. So that's the only time I almost felt like he got a bit of a G-up. He almost looked at Joseph Parker, and I look at Joseph Parker as a really tough task for him, but he almost looked at Joseph Parker as it's a formality, it's done. And I guess, look, you get that confidence when your back catalogue says you beat Hrgovic, you beat AJ, you beat Jarrell Miller, and you had some good rounds against Alexander Usyk. So he's probably thinking he's done the toughest part of his stretch already, and at this one, it's just a case of give me another defence and we move on. But he seemed really confident. Joseph Parker also seems confident. Andy Lee does as well. Frank does what Frank does, but I got an overconfidence feel from Daniel Dubois in that.
Do you think that's convected confidence in terms of it's manufactured, or do you think it's real confidence? Because what I heard Daniel do, he parrots a lot of other people's lines, and I don't mean to be disrespectful. I don't think it's because he's a natural raconteur. He doesn't have his own shtick. You know, he picks up what someone else says and then he adopts it into his repertoire and repeats it. And we saw some of that on the discussion. But do you both think that Daniel genuinely believes that he's now where he needs to be, or do you think it's a little bit of false bravado that's being built around him because he's the heavyweight champion of the world? That's what they do.
No, I think I genuinely believe it, and I think that's partly because of the good run of form that he's had against the opponents that you just mentioned, especially against AJ. He now genuinely believes that he is the world heavyweight champion and he could be the next one to reign for some time. He does genuinely believe that. That gives you that added confidence. It elevates you to another level. Don Charles as well must be mentioned in this part as well, because Don Charles has been brilliant in working on that side of things.
Sorry, Spencer, across you, but why wasn't... You've got Andy Lee there.
Yeah.
And you've got Don, and Don's been quite vociferous about being overlooked in the past and being maligned and not given the credit that he's due. Andy Lee is training Joseph Parker. So why was Frank there?
No idea. No idea. Honestly, when I was asked to do it...
Hand-holding?
Yeah, when I was asked to do it, I was like, OK, is it going to just be Dubois and Parker? Because I think Dubois now can handle himself in this situation.
And we know Joseph Parker can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they said, OK, no, Andy Lee's going to be there and Frank Warren. And I insisted, no, let's get Don in. I think it makes a lot more sense. Sure. I'd love to see Andy and Don go at each other, because there were things that Andy said about Daniel that I know Don would have jumped on straight away. So, yeah, it was disappointing not to see Don there. And I do think Don, sometimes, I know he can get upset with the way in which he's looked at, but I do think he's been overlooked sometimes.
Yeah. He's emotionally invested. That's the thing with Don. And he has played a big part in Daniel's remoulding as a fighter.
This is his prized
not just physically, but mentally. And I think that must be... You must give that credit to Don Charles for doing that.
Was there any jeopardy in the conversation? I mean, we saw the altercation between Anthony Joshua and Daniel Dubois, where Anthony got up and got irritated and Dubois was having none of it, and Frank Warren said, that'll do, let's pair it off. But it seemed to be very light-hearted between these two boys. And we got off, you shut up, you shut up, you shut up. It was a bit like Vicky Pollard, right? You know, no, but yeah, but no, but. But did you get a sense of real animosity in the room, energy, or was it just very relaxed? I mean, Daniel doesn't create that much tension,
It was so relaxed until that moment. And it's strange, because when you're in the middle, you're trying to gauge sort of the temperature in the room. And although there was that shut up, Dubois was smiling through it. And then Dubois stopped smiling, and that's when Joseph Parker realised, OK, you're being serious. Because I think Joseph Parker thought the shut up was a thing. And when he kind of swore and said, you're talking rubbish, you're acting, I saw Joseph Parker's demeanour completely change.
Yeah.
And then they did that stare. And sometimes you watch those things and it's edited. That stare was legit. And I thought, oh, do I jump in? So I kind of left it go for about sort of 10 seconds, and I wish I let it go for a bit longer because it felt like it went on for 10 minutes. And that stare there, I think we're about 20 seconds away from one of them doing something. Honestly,
Really?
Yeah, honestly, I felt like Dubois is either going to stand up or Parker's going to stand up. And then I think Frank smiled at Parker and then it kind of just simmered. And I was like, why'd you smile? I really thought they were going to go.
Well, I think that it tells you that both fighters are super confident. That's where you're at with it. Both fighters totally believe in themselves.
Well, they will be,
both
because they're both on recent form, aren't they?
Yeah, no, but that's exactly it. They're both remoulded and they've both sort of run that level together in the last 12, 16, 18 months.
Two top 6 heavyweights.
I think it's the most intriguing fight in the heavyweight division right now because it's a real banana skin for Daniel Dubois. Daniel Dubois, yeah, he's on a great run, but Joseph Parker as well. Joseph Parker is only 33 years of age. People forget that. They think he's been around a long time. You mentioned in there 2016 when he won that WBO World Heavyweight title. It's a long time ago.
And he's much better than he was when he won that against Andy Ruiz.
Yep.
He's much better than the guy that fought fought AJ in Cardiff. He's much better now. I think him and Andy Lee are in sync. He's put on a bit of size. He looked really big.
Yeah.
He thought he was going to fight Zhili Zhang, so he put on, I think, 20, 30 pounds of muscle. He has come down a bit now because obviously it's not Zhang, it's Dubois, and he wants to play the speed game. But he's super confident. I think his only worry is that he really hasn't fought since then. He hasn't fought since the Zhang fight. And he's like, well, come on, I beat Wilder, I beat Zhang, why have I been frozen out? Whereas Dubois has stayed busy.
He did bite on the Daniel Dubois observation about, well, what about you and Joe Joyce then? And he went straight into, well, I wasn't very well mode. And we didn't hear that directly. We've heard that being said in recent times, but we didn't hear it after the fight because we were there, weren't we? When Joe Joyce took an enormous amount of punishment from Joseph Parker and then eventually knocked him out.
I spoke to him about that, Simon, in Saudi, I don't know, maybe a year ago now. And he talked about it. He said, listen, it's not for me to highlight that. As soon as I go out there and say that, people go, yeah, making excuses. He chose to keep that quiet, but he did bite there and say that. But he come back very well and said to Daniel, well, what about you and Joe Joyce? Again, you went down with a jab, but, we'll talk to us about there. So I think that back and forth, I think Joe handled himself very well.
I mean, I'm in the camp that I think Daniel Dubois is going to knock Joseph Parker out. Not because I want him to, and not because I don't rate Joseph Parker, because I do. But a lot of stock is being made of Joseph Parker beating a washed-out Deontay Wilder that's no longer fit for purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And a 42-year-old Zhili Zhang, whose best wins were against a Joe Joyce that was exposed for being very one-dimensional with respect to Joe, whose biggest claim to fame before the first fight was how many shots he could take, and he proved it, and eventually took too many shots because we were all talking about Joe Joyce could take any shot. Look at him, he's made of granite, and he bought into that himself, and then he shipped punishment in the second fight. He should never have taken Zhili Zhang on. But I look at Joseph Parker as being someone that's improved markedly under Andy Lee. He's has more propensity to let his hands go than the version that fought Anthony Joshua in 2018, which was a boring fight that the referee helped contribute towards a boring fight. But also Anthony was fighting for other things, and so he was keeping out of range to some extent during that fight as well. But I am looking past Joseph Parker. I genuinely am. Duke McKenzie's in the same space, and I listen to Duke, and I think he's got great boxing IQ. He doesn't see past Daniel Dubois knocking Joseph Parker out. Are we in danger of really underestimating Parker in this instance?
I think that Ade made a very valid point there, and he felt that in the room, he felt that Daniel Dubois was in danger of overlooking Joseph Parker. That is a bad thing to do. Let's not forget, when Joseph Parker boxed Deontay Wilder, when he boxed Deontay Wilder, we didn't know what Wilder was coming to the ring, and Joseph Parker was a big underdog going into that one, and he took control. So but Simon,
that's irrelevant.
No, it's not relevant. I'll tell you why it's not irrelevant. Because he didn't know where Deontay Wilder was. So his mindset, he's going in there not knowing the Wilder he's going into. Let's say with Zhili Zhang, when he went in against Deontay Wilder, he knew what he was going in against at that time. So the mindset is that there's a lot of difference in there going into that nervous energy that's built up.
For Daniel Dubois against Hrgović, who was considered to be a real viable contender for a world title.
Yes.
And the destruction of the soon or expected to be anointed Anthony Joshua on the back of his redemption are far more compelling
100%
than the wins.
Agree.
So it is right that Dubois should be potentially the favourite.
That Daniel Dubois, and it isn't just the wins, it's how he's beat them as well.
Totally.
He bullied the bully in Hrgović.
He did.
To the point where Hrgović was like, OK, no more.
And shipped punishment, by
no
the way.
more, and took some shots. Yeah. And then it's the magnitude of the fight against AJ. This isn't AJ fighting in Saudi Arabia, where it's a bit smaller. The crowd
Wembley
aren't
Stadium,
involved. This is Wembley Stadium, 96,000. And you've won every part of that fight aside from a minute.
Yeah.
So it's the magnitude of the wins. He's going out there now to destroy fighters. He's not going out to box. He's saying, OK, these are my attributes. I finally got a coach that's unlocked those attributes, and bang. Right. I think Dubois is frightened. I think he's at the perfect age.
Yeah.
I think he's confident in and out the ring. I think that helps as well. And I think he's got the team around.
Well, we're going to see, aren't we? Look, we're going to see. Let's move on to the main event on February the 22nd, which is Beterbiev versus Bivol.
Cool.
A fantastic fight. We had, yeah. I mean, you know, a fight for the ages. We had Dimitri Bivol on the show a couple of weeks ago. Let's have a listen to what he had to say. Do you, I mean, the big question about you is, over the years, people have watched you and become acutely conscious of how good a fighter you are. When we saw you fight Craig Richards back in the day, people felt that Craig Richards could have imposed himself more in that fight and might have had a better opportunity if he'd have been a bit bolder. And then we saw you against Canelo Alvarez and the world changed, not necessarily through your eyes, but through other people's eyes. But the big question about you with Beterbiev, Dimitri, is about punch power and the ability to be able to back him up and stop him from imposing himself in the way that possibly he's done on most of his opponents. Do you think you've got the punch power to be able to deal with him? And do you think you need to stop him to win this fight?
I think that I have to create more successful moments to win him. I had these moments in the first fight, but I just need to create much more moments like this. And about power, I feel that I have enough power to stop any boxer in my weight division. It's enough power. It's just about to deliver this punching powers.
Listening to what he said, I mean, do you agree with the way he's representing his side of the arguments?
No. And I'm the biggest Dimitri Bivol fan. I think he's sensational. I don't think he has the power to stop Beterbiev.
Keep him off.
Yeah, to keep him off. I was ringside for that, and he landed some really big shots, and Beterbiev's a couple of times walked back, but most time walked through those shots. I will say this about Dimitri Bivol, and Spencer can allude to this as well. He does fight on his toes a lot, and he rarely sits down on his shots, because he's always on the move, always on the move. I would love to see him at one stage sit down.
But if he does, doesn't he leave himself exposed?
This is the problem. If he sits down, he's in the pocket. If you're in the pocket with Beterbiev,
you're in range.
Yeah.
You can't sit down with Beterbiev. That is the big problem for him. Like you said, it was interesting listening to him in that interview there, where he's saying he wants to create those moments more. So basically, what he's saying is, when I do create that space, because Beterbiev is far too strong, he will control the space. He will take that space away from Bivol, and that's his main asset. But what he's saying is, when I do create that space, I need to let my hands go more and try and nick those rounds.
And I get the opportunity, I've got to take it.
Beterbiev done a great thing in that last fight. When the rounds were close, that last 30 seconds, he just picked it up and he won them. And that won him the fight. You know, whatever you felt or whoever you felt won that one, Beterbiev won purely on that that timer in his head, he nicked those last 30 seconds.
I mean, Bivol felt he won, and it's very, very pleasing to see a dignified loser every now and again. I don't want to see people losing all the time because it makes them a loser, but every now and again you've got to be dignified about it. Given all that we've just said, given your thought processes about the fact that Bivol isn't right in making the observations that he has the power to potentially deal with Beterbiev and back him up, how do you see this fight playing out?
Same as the last one.
Same as it?
Same as the last one. Honestly, Bivol was perfect for me. And he's going to have to be perfect again. And I think that the only difference is, can he steal a couple of rounds that are close? Can he do it again? I'm not quite sure. My thing is, who does this help, this quick turnaround? And Beterbiev went into that fight after knee surgery a few months before. The knee's perfect now.
Yeah, going to be better now.
The knee's perfect, so his own movement. Beterbiev, I spoke to Beterbiev a few days ago, and he was upset with the performance. Yeah. He was upset that he, at times, got outboxed, because he thinks he can outbox Bivol. So Beterbiev's going in there this time thinking, I'm going to outbox you.
He can't.
I know I'm bigger and stronger. He can't, but I do think he gave Bivol so many exit points, and I think he's going to cut those exit points off. And it's up to Bivol. Bivol's going to have to stand there and try and man-o-man him. Yeah. And I don't know if he can do it. If he does that, he gets stopped.
And when he does create that little space, that's when he needs to make it pay. And I think that he was guilty of not doing that before. He was creating a space and he was allowing Beterbiev just to, regroup, come back again. But yeah, Beterbiev, he's the guy that's going to be pushing. I agree with Ade. It's going to be a very similar fight. I think it's going to go down to the wire again.
Do you?
But you just think that strength, that added strength, and Beterbiev will be better going into this one. He's 40 years of age. Time is not on his side, but I think that last fight would have helped him a lot.
Because Bivol said, didn't he, if I just correct my memory, I've got to do what I did before, but better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're saying to do what he does better, he's got to put himself in the way of things in a certain way. And that means, I think, that Beterbiev will stop him this time round, for what my opinion is worth.
Yeah, could do.
But whatever, it's going to be a great fight.
Great fight.
Absolutely.
Great. What a main event.